The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable. David, this is an easy conversation because it's all about your story. This show is about the nature and appreciation of transformations, particularly in leadership. And somebody like you, who is a social media guru, who has been on the stage in front of hundreds of people showcasing your own physical transformation and just your prowess around high performance, that's yet another transformation story. So there are plenty of leadership topics that I could start with, David. I guess I'm really curious for the listening audience to know who David is and how you got to be doing what you're doing today. Let's just start there.
Yeah, well, it definitely hasn't been linear for me. I don't think it is for many people out there, I'll say that. But you know, speaking about my own personal story, and I think people in general, when it's speaking about your own story, to some it seems like it's easy and straightforward, but it's not, right? There's just so many layers and so many things that I've gone through that have really shaped who I am and the experiences that I've had. It's difficult to know where to start or what to talk about. I know that you know and have had some or some insight and some looks into what I've experienced and what I've been through just with my trip to India, my story of what happened there. But there was a lot that built up to that, a lot that led to it, and a lot that followed as well. So in terms of my own personal story, I mean, it's one that's still evolving. Uh, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot that could be spoken of. Obviously, if we're going to be talking about, success and high performance um, and the things that have shaped me and my story, um, where would you like me to start? I mean, I could talk
Wow.
for an hour just about India.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you're a young man from Canada, right? Who found his way all the way to Ireland, and that's where you reside now. So why don't we start with who was David in Canada and who is David now in Ireland? Let's just compare and contrast those two, and obviously India has to come into the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was David in Canada and who's David in India? I'm the same person. I would say that I am, and it's kind of, I suppose, an I've been working towards. And one of the reasons I wanted to come was because of everything that I have been pursuing in Canada. So I suppose where we could start as myself or with myself and my story, if we look back to, I suppose where things really started to take shape for me would have been in my adolescence, right? Going through high school. I think that's really what put me on the trajectory that I am right now, or in the path that I am of trying to discover who I am and where I want to be in life. I remember being in high school and feeling lost, not really having any direction and not feeling like I belonged anywhere, right? Not feeling like I had people who understood me. And I still very much feel that way as well. But as a result of that, when I left high school and, went into university, I was searching for acceptance, right? Searching for community, searching for people who understood me and somewhere that I would fit in. And what that led to for myself, which I think it may with many young men, is drugs and alcohol, trying to find meaning in external satisfaction and stimuli. And I thought I had found it, right? Finally found people that I enjoyed spending time with and doing things with. And evidently it was the wrong situation to be in. But what that led to for myself was facing jail time, right? Struggling with addiction and substance abuse, of course. And that's where it really led to a low point in my life, right? So I would say that's what put me on the path of who I am today. But when I entered that valley, the valley of despair and darkness, let's say, um, that's where I started to realize who it is that I wanted to become, who I wanted to be, because it was very clear to me at that time who I didn't want to be, and that I was as far away from the person that I would become as I ever would be. And things took a turning point, let's say. Um, at that point, struggling with suicidal thoughts and self-loathing and breaking myself down to a point where I was working towards taking, right? I got to a point where I realized this isn't who I'm going to be. This isn't who I want to be. And it's not who I ever wanted to become. So at that time, I realized that the only way to get myself out of that would be to change myself entirely, right? As I had changed myself entirely to get to that point in that valley of despair. And the path that I chose to get out of it was bodybuilding because, I think I realized that in order to change myself internally, mentally and psychologically, I'd have to go through an incredible physical transformation as well, or that's what I felt anyways. This was around it was around 2013, 2014. This is when, fitness was becoming really popular on Facebook, the fitness influencers and physique competitors and all of these things. And I looked at them with such admiration. And looking at them, I said, if I could bring myself to look like that and have the discipline and the fortitude and the strength to change myself so drastically physically, I can only imagine what it would do to myself mentally and psychologically. So that's a path that I started on. Well, I don't want to talk on too much, Ed. There's a lot more that I could say, but perhaps there's something that you'd like to interject on or even just
Uh,
chat about.
I've got about 37 questions I could ask about that, but I really don't want to break the momentum. I think this is a compelling reason why I wanted you on the show to speak this message with the courage and authenticity that you're doing right now, man. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just tell me when I should stop because again, and when we get into India, that's still a little bit messy. Even I have a hard time remembering things that transpired then. But I suppose I'll take a couple steps back, before talking about that transformation and what I went through and how it led to where I am now. One thing that occurred, or if I recall, through the years that this all transpired, it was only probably about an 18-month period, something like that. I don't remember much of it, not surprisingly, with the amount of drugs that I was putting into my body and what I was doing to my mind. But there's two events that stand out to me, right? And that I'm thankful they transpired the way they did, I think, because one of them scared me out of the position that I was in. And one of them showed me that, these were at different times. One of them showed me I needed to change, and the other one scared me into getting straight, we could say. I remember living with some college roommates. One of them was my closest friend at the time. And this was after I had been arrested and I was going through court with my lawyer, and I was smoking ridiculous amounts of marijuana and just numbing myself, completely numbing myself to everything. And I changed drastically in just a 12-month time frame. And the my closest friend at the time, the first event that I remember that was very impactful, as he came to me and he said, I don't know you anymore. I don't know who you are. And unless things change, I'm not going to know you. And this was the closest person that I had to me in my life at the time, right? I had distanced myself from my family. I hadn't had many other friends. There are people that I always had as acquaintances and people as I had, and still have as childhood friends, but they weren't close, right? They weren't really involved in what I was going through. And this individual was. And when he said that to me, it was something that I had already known, but it's something that I was ignoring, that I was not being honest with myself about. So when he said that to me, it was an awakening, right? I didn't have the ability or the strength to change at that point, but it's when I realized that things did need to change, and I did want to change. I didn't want to take my life, right? I wanted to continue living. So, maybe 6 months, 8 months forward from that time, I was going through that struggle and that challenge and battle of changing, right? And certain things were changing physically, and certain things were changing mentally, but I was still in a very dark place, right? I was still smoking a lot of marijuana, dialing it back in some ways, but and I'm not going to demonize, let's say, cannabis because I know it can be very good medicinally for some people, but the way I was abusing it, and I was completely degrading myself. And some months forward, I remember still, at the time I was working in restaurants and kitchens. At the time I thought I wanted to be a Michelin star chef. Um, and I remember late one night taking the night bus home from downtown Toronto because I didn't have a vehicle and there was no other means of transportation for me. 3 hour bus to get home on those nights. I remember sitting on the bus and thinking, what if I did kill myself? Who would miss me? Right? Would anyone miss me? Who would be at my funeral? Right? And I was still realizing that I haven't changed, that I'm still not the person that I want to be. Um, and it was scary because I remember also thinking, what would it feel like if I took a knife and one of these knives that I have in my bag, I just drew it across my throat. What would it feel like? Would it hurt? You know, would I actually embrace it? Who would miss me? So I was sitting on the bus having these thoughts. Finally, I get home and I go, the same friend who had told me some months before, I don't recognize you. I knocked on his door. We were roommates. He didn't come to the door. And I thought, I'll tell him about it in the morning. So I had already made up my mind that this isn't something that I wanted. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I'm not sure what it was in me that realized that this isn't what I want. But it was just another, let's say, defining moment over those years, showing me, where I should be in life, where I should be going, anyways, we could say. So after taking that step back, I suppose we can fast forward again. So those were the two most pivotal things that really showed me I needed to change. And those were the two things that I reminded myself of, that that's not what I want, right? Very clearly, bright as day, this is not who I'm going to be. So I threw myself at fitness and I said, I will compete in a fitness competition on a bodybuilding stage. And that will be my sign to myself that I have changed. I've had the strength and the ability to take myself out of this dark place. So I threw myself into fitness. It was something that I was always at least somewhat passionate about. I've been lifting weights and exercising and, playing sports since a young boy. So it was something that was familiar and something that I embraced. So I threw myself at that for the next couple of years and, learned about nutrition and, I started to change. I remember this mantra that I would repeat to myself in the gym every day, every morning when I woke up. When I would write it down in a journal hundreds of times. I can't recall it now. Um, I'll have to send it to you after. I can't recall it now. But it's through that repetition and that fortitude that I started to change my mind as well. I started to hold on to something, and I suppose instill in myself what the values that I wanted to have and the strengths that I wanted to have. So through those years, I started to change physically, started to change mentally. What I wanted in life started to change as well. I started to want to inspire people and motivate them because of the change that I was experiencing in myself. And that time, now I wanted to be a professional bodybuilder. I wanted to be a personal trainer and an influencer. And I wanted to help, I suppose, shine a light in other people's lives to help them see the power that they had in themselves so that they could change their lives in the way that I had changed mine, or at least in a way that would be as impactful for them. Now, if I'm thinking back, I think my first bodybuilding competition was in 2017. Um, and I didn't do very well. I did all right. I coached myself into it. I dieted myself. I looked great physically, didn't know how to present myself on stage. So I did okay. I didn't do all that great. But I decided after that, hey, if I'm going to take this seriously, I really need to throw myself at it, need to get a coach, need to step it up and take it to the next level. So I did that. I competed a couple of more times and my body really started to change. I got a clothing sponsorship. I had a supplement sponsorship. So I was let's say a semi-pro athlete. I had made it, but not really, right? I was still working in restaurants. I was still grinding, still trying to figure it out, the direction that I wanted to go. And during this time, I met an individual that again would change the direction I was going in life. A friend of mine who was also a personal trainer and a bodybuilder, he came to me and he said, "Hey man, like I have somebody who wants private personal training sessions. I can't do it at Good Life because I'm still working there, and you're not working at Good Life Fitness anymore. Maybe you can work with them on the side." And this is what, well, enter the India story, we could say, anyways. So I met this individual, and I'll try and keep this section a little bit brief. It's a little bit unbelievable, and there's so many layers to it. that I hope I can give enough anyways. So this individual, I quickly learned, was very wealthy. I thought he was very wealthy anyways. He was and is the grandson of an Indian cosmetics billionaire, certifiably. I met his mother, spitting image of his grandmother, right? They shared stories of luxury and opulence and grandeur with me. And after I had met this individual and I started working with him as his personal trainer, he started painting pictures to me of how great an individual he was, about how philanthropic he was, about the people that he took care of back home and how many people were grateful to have him in their lives. At the same time, he was telling me of a struggle that he was going through, a custody battle with his crazy ex-wife, psychotic ex-wife, over his son, who he loved so much. And his son was everything to him. And daily he was telling me about the custody battle and what he was going through when he was depressed and he couldn't make it to the session today because he had stayed up late last night drinking because he was so miserable, and all of these things, really trying to get my sympathy in that aspect. All through this and all the while, he was also dropping tidbits in my mind of, you know, someone he knew who was an elite personal trainer, Jason Momoa's personal trainer, as a matter of fact. And he was really good friends with this individual, and there was so much going on. And of course, me being a very, let's say, an aspiring entrepreneur and somebody who wanted to make a lot of my life, of course, I told this individual, my client as a personal trainer, I told him of my aspirations and of my dreams of business and what I wanted to make of my life. And as the weeks and months went on, we started to form a business plan. I thought we were forming a business plan anyways, for a live-in personal trainer business for the elite of India, where we would bring over Western trainers, white-skinned trainers, very luxurious for the very rich people in India who see that as a status symbol. And they would live in their homes and they would have access to spas and massages and the best food. And they would be living the life that all of the influencers want to live. So the plan was I would move to India with them, right? And I did. I quit my job, left my apartment, I sold all my belongings, borrowed a backpack, a large backpack for my friend, and I went to India. Now, when I got to India, things changed pretty quickly. But it all seemed real, right? Everything checked out initially. Um, Now, I know I'm kind of going back and forth here. In my defense, I'm not sure how much you know about bodybuilding, Ed, and how much uh, extreme diets can impact someone's mind. But a very intense diet like that bodybuilders go through is similar to the state of intoxication. Plays tricks on your mind. It impacts your reasoning in some ways, right? And I, through this time, was dieting. I competed shortly before going to India. Oh man, India. The more I talk about it, there's just so many layers that I want to add in. But for the sake of time, I won't. Maybe we can have another conversation about that. So everything was checked out. He introduced me to some people. Everything looked legit. He showed me this guy showed me an article from the India Times claiming that he had donated $12.12 million to Columbia University, right? All of which I learned later on after coming back to Canada was completely false. Proven to me and shown to me by a private investigator. So everything checked out. Everything seemed really legit. Went to India. Things started to change drastically. The day before I left Canada, like, mind you, flights booked, apartment gone, possessions sold, quit my job, all of this. Get a phone call from his mother. Don't come to India. He's in the hospital. He's in the ICU. The ICU. He's had a pancreatic attack. Pancreatic attack. He was on life support. Alcohol-induced pancreatitis. A raging alcoholic, drinking himself into oblivion, which I should have picked up on, but I didn't. I had been to his house in Toronto. I had seen the bottles everywhere. Oh, I had a dinner party last night. I host dinner parties all the time. There were tons of people here. No, he was just drinking that all himself. Don't come to India. Well, what do you mean don't come to India? I can't not come now. My flight's booked. Everything's happening. Everything's in motion. I'm coming. Don't come to India. Like, listen, I'm gonna come. If everything's good, it's good. If it's not, it's fine. Let's travel. Right? Coming anyways. Hope everything's all right. So get to India. His mother puts me up in a hotel. I go see him in the hospital. He's in the ICU. He's on life support. He wanted to see me. So that was done. Everything seems to be okay. He was stable. I was going to stay. Um, when I arrived, there was a bodybuilding exposition in Delhi, which is where I landed, the Sheru Classic. Now, this individual who I'll keep referring to, I'm not going to use his name. We'll call him Bob because that is definitely not his name. Bob knew the he knew Sheru Angrash, and he got me a VIP ticket to this show, backstage access, international bodybuilders there, the likes of Jeremy Buendia. He was super popular for a while. I think many people don't love him so much anymore. He was there, so this was a pretty big thing. Again, Bob got me access to this show. Everything seems legit. So we're there. He's texting me from the ICU. We're talking about business plans still. And while I'm there, I'm realizing as we're chatting, like, no, we shouldn't just be building an Instagram page for the business to promote it, right? It'll be much more effective if we promote me as the face of the brand to start. Because remember, we're business partners after all, or apparently we're business partners. I think we should actually promote myself and then use that and funnel it towards the business, is what I'm telling him. I start getting sharp, fast responses. No, that's bullshit. That doesn't work. Nobody follows faces. It's got to be the brand. Just start saying all these wild things that I know are factually inaccurate, like that don't make sense. And I start saying certain things like, hey, like I've been talking to some of my contacts in Canada and North America and in Ireland. Our common acquaintance Matt was one of them. Talking to people who I was going to bring into this, get them to come to India, and figuring out, what's it going to take, how much money, what sort of accommodations, like what's going to take for you to actually be part of this. So I started telling him, listen, like we need to do things a little bit differently. We need to let people still, have other sources of income, whether they take other clients here, whether they have online clients. We need to do something so that they can actually make more money while they're doing this, not just live a great lifestyle. And he starts going off. He starts going wild and starts acting very irrationally and in a way that I had never seen him act before, completely out of character, apparently. So I started to get some concerns, naturally. But I kind of suppressed them. I said, you know what, like maybe stress. It's obviously in the ICU. There's a lot going on. I'll wait until it gets out. We'll smooth this over. It'll be fine. So the bodybuilding exposition ends, and I'm living out of this hotel. Mind you, this all transpires over a couple days. I wasn't there very long. I was there for 3 days. Exposition ends. I'm in the hotel. I'm working, starting to do some foundational things for the business, a little bit more of it. And Bob starts sending me messages from the ICU, and he says, hey, listen, like, don't know when we're really going to be able to get this up and going, just because obviously I'm still in the hospital. I want you to start networking for that. But in the meanwhile, I want you to start acting as my executive assistant and some other business opportunities that I have. And you can just help me with those, and I'll make sure that you get paid in the meanwhile until this other business is up and running. So I said, yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. 100%. I'm here to work hard. I'm going to show you that I'm worth it. Right. Because this guy, he had told me, he was the CEO of some hedge fund and a whole bunch of big things, obviously. So he said, I have some access to some luxury goods that I want to start selling on eBay, Cartier bracelets and designer jewelry. He said, do you know how to set up an eBay store? I'm like, I haven't done it before, but I can figure it out. No problem. I'll do it. I'll figure it out and make it work. Set up the store. Oh, hey, man. Hey, Bob. we need to hook up a bank account to this, right? There needs to be there needs to be a way to complete transactions, right? A merchant account. He's like, oh, hook it up to your bank account. I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah, just use your credit card. I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that. Like, why does that make sense? So, well, you have to get paid some way, don't you? It's like, okay, but this is a business that you want to start. This is something you want to do and something you want me to support you in. Why am I banking? I obviously start to ask questions, and he's not giving me straight answers. He's not answering me at all in some situations. Now, later, I had learned after arriving back to Canada that this individual, Bob, had actually been barred from the Indian government. Uh, he had been barred at conducting or participating in any legal business activity in India for a decade because of fraud, because of financial fraud in the past. Yeah, I know, right? So I didn't trust him anymore. And I realized that very quickly because of how he was acting. He was irrational, verbally abusive, trying to manipulate me and control me. And I was all starting to realize this. So what did I do? Um, I told him, hey, man, it's not you, it's me, right? This isn't a situation I feel I'm ready for, right? I feel like this is something that I want to do, but I think I need a little bit more time. I'm going to leave, right? It's not you, it's me, to make it short. I'm coming after you with everything I've got. You're causing me to lose millions of dollars. I'm going to sue you. I'm coming after you with my lawyers, all of this. Now, this is an individual who I believe was very influential, very powerful. Told me he had a diplomatic passport, right? I didn't know what a diplomatic passport looked like. When he sent me a photo of his white Indian passport, turns out he had lost his. It actually expired and he was living in Canada illegally still. And this was an emergency passport he got, this white passport. It wasn't a diplomatic passport. So I was under the impression that he had connections in the law and that he was very influential. And India is a big place. It's a developing nation. There's still a lot of corruption there, as there is in Canada and in the US still. So I was pretty worried. I was in a hotel. I'd left the one that his mom put me up in, didn't tell him where I was going, closest hotel to the airport, and trying to figure things out with my family, updating them, telling them what was going on. So the consensus was that I had to leave, and I had to leave as soon as possible. I had to leave now. So I didn't buy a ticket online. I went to the airport. I don't know if anyone does this anymore, but I bought a ticket at the desk at the airport. I went to the lady. I'm like, I can't tell her the truth. I can't tell her what's going on. No one can know who I am. I need to get out of here before anyone knows anything. If this guy has connections in the police, right? What could happen? Maybe I won't be able to leave. So I went to her and I said, I need to leave. I need the first plane back to Canada. I don't care what it costs. I don't care how long it's going to take. My grandma's on her deathbed and I need to get anywhere. I can go to North America. I can go to Europe. I've got family, right? I just need to, where can I go? So I think it was 4 connecting flights to get me back to Canada. Now, from when I left Canada to when I arrived, it was about, I think it was a 5-day period, including the flights. The flights are like 17 hours. So I wasn't in India very long. I got back to Canada with very little money, no job, no apartment, and really no possessions to my name. And that's when things really started to change for me. What I mean by that is, obviously I'm a very ambitious person. Obviously, I'm going to pick up my life and move to India, not on a whim, but in pursuit of something that I thought was going to be incredible. I was leaving behind everything I knew, and I was taking a massive risk. And when I had arrived back in Canada after this whole ordeal, I realized that with such a grand failure, with actually being able to take myself to the point where I could do that and get over the fear or the uncertainty or live with it or confront it and face it, if I could move to India in search of a dream or in pursuit of the success that I want in my life, I could bring myself to do even bigger things. And the larger the endeavors are that I fail at, the closer I am to achieving what it is that I want. I remember walking around in Toronto, looking for a job in hospitality again, because I worked in the industry for so many years as I was working towards becoming a professional bodybuilder. I remember walking down the street, didn't have an apartment. I was sleeping on a couch, really didn't have anything. But I was just laughing. It was a sunny day, I had the sun on my face. I just started laughing. I thought this is incredible because I realized like if I can take myself to move to India in pursuit of uncertainty, I'll be able to do whatever I pursue and whatever I commit myself to. So what I think would have destroyed many people was really foundational for me in getting over fears and uncertainties and being able to put myself in a position where I'll continue, right? I'll continue chasing my dreams or chasing what it is that I want to achieve because I know that as long as I'm alive, I can continue. That's my India story. After that, COVID basically struck. That was the end of 2019, August 2019. COVID changed my life again entirely. I could talk on about that. I'm very different now than I was at the beginning of, COVID-19 pandemic. But maybe I'll stop there again for a minute.
Wow. David. What is it like speaking that story into the world? I mean, you told me that story in a pub in Ireland. And I'm sure you've had to tell that story a few times in your life to family, to friends. It's part of who you are. What did it just feel like to say all that as eloquently, courageously, and authentically as you did?
It doesn't really feel like much, to be honest. It just feels like a part of my life. It feels like an experience, right? It didn't necessarily make me, it didn't break me, it's just part of my past and everything I've been through in my life is just contributing to who I am now, but who I am now doesn't really matter because it's who I want to be tomorrow. So I know that will shape me, but it doesn't really feel like much, I suppose, because it's my own experience, right? To other people hearing it, they're like, wow, that's crazy. Wow, that's the type of thing you only see in a movie. This can't actually be real, or this guy's a complete idiot. He got conned into going to India. I would have been able to see that coming. There's so many layers there, right? But at the end of the day, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a whole lot. It's just an experience I had.
Yeah, and yeah, from the outside, I mean, the first time I heard this story, I was dumbfounded. I mean, look at all the variables that had to be shown and showcased in such a way to change or to create the lens with which you were viewing that situation. It's amazing. Uh, That's something, well, each part of your story that you just told was amazing, all of which would break the average person. So I guess I'm looking at the nature of the man, David, that um in your opinion, do most people end up a victim of their circumstance or a victor? What determines the difference?
Yeah. I think modern society kind of makes a lot more victims than victors, right? Just with that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think society is really just now forming victims more than anything, and hopefully it's taking a turn. It is in many ways. There's a lot of great influential people out there who are, you know, influencing the younger generation. Um, I suppose that's all I have to say on that right now.
Well, you said a word earlier that piqued my curiosity. You talked about values, and what you value was what you leaned on in the moment. Um, did I recall that correctly? Number one, and number two, is that possibly the reason why we have the number of victims that we do is because we've lost that common human trait across communion with one another that we don't talk about values anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, I think values are a big one, right? Because especially with, the industry that I'm in with social media, um, and what it puts out there and how distracting it is and how really shallow and superficial it is in so many ways that a lot of people don't really have the time and mental space when they're younger now, especially to sort of form those values if they're not given to them. And even if they are by their parents or by other people in their lives, there's just so many distractions coming from society telling people who young people who they should be, who they need to be, and how they need to represent themselves, that I don't think there's much thought put into value for younger people. And I think that for myself, a lot of, or like probably one of the primary reasons I was able to go through this experience with India was because of what I experienced prior, right? Because I was at such a low point, it would be hard to get any lower than that, right? So I knew that because I took myself out of that and the mindset that I had formed in doing so, that as long as I was able to, really separate, I suppose, what truly matters from what doesn't, right? Like I was alive, I was back home, I was in a place where I knew I could earn money, I had family and I had friends, right? I had a support system. Whereas, what doesn't matter, or the possessions and the belongings and the job and the apartment and all of those things, that didn't matter. Didn't matter that I had debt coming back, or not much money, had some cash, but lots of credit card debt, right? Because of what I went through. None of that really mattered because none of it actually impacted who I was and the actions that I could take on any day.
Okay. So then young men who face adversity and start the trek into the valley of darkness. For for me, having witnessed pain and suffering in family members and friends and the students that I taught, my gut reaction was to rescue them from that journey. I was terrified of the possible outcome that it could have. So preventing you from going to the depths of despair and darkness was my MO. And maybe that was when I became a parent, that that was a hypersensitive nerve for me. If there's a trend downward, I need to go help push that up. I need to change the trajectory. But the more I hear of stories like yours, David, and others, is that it's almost like that journey has to happen in order for you to discover and synthesize the answer that lies at the bottom of the valley. Now,
Mm.
granted, some people make a choice to depart the journey, and yet others don't. So is there a right answer there from a rescue perspective to allow people to make their own decisions versus robbing them of the journey if you rescue them? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
I don't think people can be rescued, right? You have to be your own superhero, right? You have to be willing to rescue yourself, because unless you can be honest with yourself and who you are, where you're at, and what your reality is, you're not going to change that reality, right? I know this because I'm a very stubborn person, obviously, before going to India, from my parents, from my family. Are you sure you trust this guy? Are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure this is something you want to do? Right? Experimenting with drugs. Oh yeah, everyone, this, that, and the other. I want to experience it firsthand. Right? I need to learn these things for myself. Right? And being a stubborn individual, you know, you can't win an argument, because if you convince, and this is a bit of a tangent, but you can't win an argument by convincing somebody else that you're right, even if they say yes, you're right, and they don't accept it for themselves because they're not honest about that, or they don't realize it and they don't accept it on their own terms. They won't accept it internally. So I believe that you can't rescue people. They have to rescue themselves. Maybe you can influence people in in their perspective and in their understanding, but they need to accept it for themselves.
Is there a circle of influence where that rule no longer applies? What if it's a brother, a cousin, a child? Is the rule the same?
That's a good question. I think for myself, I haven't experienced that, but I'm sure that, and I think what it comes down to is trust, right? If you trust someone enough, and perhaps there is a parallel for me when the one friend I had said, "I don't recognize you anymore," right? I think there are things that can be said, I suppose, if there's enough trust, that when somebody says it, right? You can take it, you can take it from them and accept it. But I think even at that time, I still had to process it. And I think that for myself in that situation that I mentioned, it's something that I already knew, right? It's just something that I wasn't coming to terms with.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. David, thank you for sharing. That's man, so many questions around that. In the pivot to your physical transformation, obviously your mindset changed along with that. If you could name the three leadership lessons from your physical transformation that have built the platform on which you stand today, confidently and courageously stand. What would you name those principles or laws of leadership? What three would those be?
Yeah, I spent some time thinking about this leading up to our call because, I think I remembered you mentioning that, and it was something that I wanted to make sure that I understood in myself enough. But if I could break it down to three, if there's three principles that people need to have if they're going to be successful in any way, shape, or form, in whatever way they want to be, it's going to be honesty, accountability, and integrity. And I guess to break that down a little bit more, and what I mean by that is, honesty is knowing who you are and where you're at in life, and being able to come to terms with that. Where accountability will be the willingness to actually accept responsibility and take ownership for the position that you're in. And integrity is just going to be the fortitude to be able to maintain the prior to without any compromise. So you have to be able to be honest with yourself and say, what's wrong with me? Right? Where do I want to be? What do I need to fix? Being accountable to actually take the actions to do so, and being able to persist.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I feel like, particularly in men, and it could be really the younger generations that I'm wanting to embrace with this, is self-awareness has to increase. That again, I don't mean to point the finger at social media as the cause, but it certainly doesn't help when you have that kind of external validation of your internal inadequacies. It's not helping the situation. You've got to rise up from within and shine outward on your own social media channel first before you start downloading others. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that's probably one of the things that impacted me, right? Because I was also part of the younger generation when social media was coming out and, untamed, right? And as it developed and evolved, it greatly impacted me in the ways that you're mentioning.
Yeah, I find a lot of the issues impacting men today start with self-awareness. Heck, a couple of months ago, I was helping a group of young leaders within a company on communication, and well, they were below your generation a little bit, but they had risen through the ranks enough because of their grit and tenacity, and yet they carried with them the entire time the anchors of imposter syndrome, fear of failure, all of these things that shaped the lens that they saw others and the way they were communicating with each other. Goodness gracious, just a complete lack of
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring that to this conversation to ask you the question, when you look across the spectrum of people that you influence now and have helped and supported with the values that you stand on, are there patterns of dysfunction you see in men of any generation right now? Yeah, let's just start there with patterns.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, in my opinion, would be seeking external validation, right? Exactly as you said, right? Um, because if you need to look to other people to figure out who you should be, then you don't understand the fundamentals of who you should be. So if you don't know how you should act and who you should be, then you can't be in a position where, uh, you're trying to influence others as well. I mean, just speaking to the leadership role that you mentioned, these young men were in, right?
Sure. Sure. So are there others that are the common problems impacting men
Mm.
today?
I like to simplify things as much as possible, right? So like if everything can come down to the root, and if it is self-awareness or if it is, seeking external validation, I don't know how much further it could go for me, right? Because if I look at this, I feel like those could be the roots, or the three that I mentioned, right? The honesty, accountability, and integrity, right? Because I feel like those three, and I did spend quite a bit of time on this, but I feel like those three really are the root of who people should be, and whether it's values or whether it's morals or influence, right? If you have those three things in place, then I feel like in my life, anyways, with those in place, things just come together.
Yeah, I hear you there, and I don't disagree at all. David, the way you speak makes me feel as though the vision that you have created for yourself in your future is a powerful enough vision to pull you to something greater than yourself. And that relieves you of burdens that are of your past and might try to anchor you. But this vision that you have is far more powerful. I'd love your perspective on that observation before I ask my
Mm-hmm.
next question.
Yeah, that vision that I have is something that I'm still trying to figure out because I've always been type of person to want to be the best at everything I do. I'm always dreaming of something bigger, right? When I was a young boy, wanting to be a professional skateboarder, right? And then wanting to be a Michelin star chef, wanting to be a professional bodybuilder, wanting to be a big entrepreneur, wanting to make lots of money, right? And I know that will lead to something. The end result, I don't know what the end result will be, but the means will lead to something greater, or the end will be greater. Um, so for me, I don't really know what that is yet. I'm still on a path of discovery. Like if I look at even, the position I'm in right now, I have a marketing agency, right? And for the longest time, I thought that I want to have financial freedom so I can live life on my own terms, so I can spend time with the people who I want to spend time with. And then at that point, I'll be able to figure things out about what else I would want to do, right? From my experiences working in the corporate world, even just months ago, I thought, I don't want to have a big company, right? I don't want to get back into the politics of what that's like. I don't want to have to deal with people on a larger scale. But the more my agency grows and the more I'm able to impact my employees and the appreciation that I see from them, right? And the impact and the meaning that I can interject, well, the impact I can have on their lives makes me feel like maybe that is something that I want, right? So I think that the further I get in whatever direction I'm going, um, the more purpose and value I start to see for myself in the future. Because I mean, I'm still at a point where I'm trying to feed myself and my family, right? In a manner of speaking. So until I can fully feed myself and my belly is full, it'll be hard for me to think about filling the bellies of others.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe what I labeled as vision, listening to you speak, the other word that comes to mind is belief. That there is enough belief in your potential that whatever means come, you know they will lead to an end. That's a
Yeah.
faith walk,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know
Mm-hmm.
the answers, but you step forward anyway. That's faith. And I'm not talking about it
Mm-hmm.
from a religiosity standpoint. That's just belief, right?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know where that comes from. And I don't know why I have it, but I've always had it. Right. And it's odd because I don't know. Like at times I think I just want to be a hermit. I want to go live in the mountains. I don't want to care about anything. I just want to have a quiet, peaceful, tranquil life. But I know that that wouldn't satisfy me because I don't know what it is. I just have an insatiable desire for more. And that's not like because I think that more will make me happy necessarily, right? I don't need to have a Rolex. That's not what I'm going for. Would I like to have one? Yeah, cool. That'd be all right. Right. But that's not what drives me. I don't necessarily know what it is other than I suppose fulfillment. What is fulfillment? Right. I think that's what I'm still trying to find. So that faith and that belief, it's there and I recognize it, but I don't know where it comes from.
Well, maybe you labeled it as stubborn when actually it's belief.
Yeah, perhaps.
Interesting. I heard it described by Brian and Gabrielle Boucher. They have a company called The Purpose Factor. And it's probably the number one question I get. And I know the listeners have heard me say this 100 times on this show, but I think it's important that the number one question that I get as a personal development person is from men of any age who at some point find themselves asking the question, why am I here? What's my purpose? And the way Brian and Gabrielle describe it after years of research is that purpose originates in a recognition, appreciation, and an exercise of your giftedness.
Mm,
That giftedness is then given, showcased, highlighted, shined on someone else. That is your purpose, is to give it and shine it. And then in
mm,
return, you get fulfillment from that. So it's a purpose overall as a cycle. Giftedness, sharing of the purpose, someone receives it. After the receipt, you receive fulfillment because you saw its impact. If
mm,
any
mm,
component of that cycle is broken, it leaves people in question.
mm,
Okay, I have a gift, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know who to
mm.
give it to. Or I'm giving it to the wrong people, so I never get the fulfillment.
Yeah.
Or um, people aren't communicating it well, and my mind is so distracted, or I'm not listening. I don't receive the fulfillment because I'm not
Mm,
paying attention. So you see how complicated
yeah.
purpose can get and how multifactorial. I'd love your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just with you explaining that, it's it's touching a point in my mind and making me realize some things that maybe I've forgotten, but we're always there. Um, one of the reasons why I've never been happy working for other people towards their purpose is because it's never fulfilled me. Temporarily, perhaps the satisfaction of learning something new and hitting milestones and getting some recognition, but there's never actually been a sense of lasting fulfillment. And I think that for me, if I look at where I have felt the most purpose in my life, it's when I'm helping other people, whether it's because I'm teaching them something that I know that I have learned or trying to, share my experiences with them and hope that they can get some value from it. I've always been the type of person to want to help people, even though there are points in my life where I didn't want to interact with anybody. I've done a lot of stuff with my life, but when I was a young boy, I wanted to be a firefighter, wanted to save people, or I wanted to be a policeman or be in the army and save lives, or you know, um, dream about saving a child from being hit by a bus, things like this, right? And when I started taking professional roles in corporate for corporations, it was, seeing colleagues who might be struggling where I'm excelling and wanting to help them with that. But I think that, there's always been a sense of wanting to help people. So I think I'm still just trying to figure out how I want to help people.
Yeah, David. Wow, wow. Well, look, I want to be respectful of your time. We're clearly going to have another conversation because I only got through 11 of my
Yeah.
questions, and there's 67 here. So number one, I'm going to invite you back, and I hope you say yes. Otherwise, I'm going to have to come to Ireland and find you. Your story is intriguing, compelling. It speaks to many values beyond the three you just mentioned that you stand on. I see a lot of courage. I see a lot of strength. I see a lot of just, well, it's your word. It is a light of leadership that to me speaks of a spirit of helping others on their journey and helping them synthesize their way forward using your lenses of leadership that you've experienced in your life. You're an eloquent speaker that has to come from courageous experiences that give you the confidence in the words that you choose and the faithful spirit that you speak them speaks to a character of the man that I find really attractive and really endearing. And I knew it when I stood next to you in 3 dimensions, and it comes across just as clearly to me in 2 dimensions. So, David, thank you. Thank you for your story. I find so much value in it, and I'm going to have to listen to this a few more times to hear the the true power of the leadership principles that are behind there. So, thank you, man. That was brilliant.
I appreciate it. It was my pleasure. You're an incredible human, and if there's anything that I can do to provide any sort of value to you on your journey, I'll be here for it.
Yeah, thanks, David. If people want to follow your journey or connect with you and be curious not only about your story, but also you're a really wise entrepreneur and marketing strategist. Um, Curious how can people follow you?
Well, they can find me on Instagram. I'm not too active, surprisingly. I have a social media marketing agency, but that takes up most of my time, so I haven't created too much content for myself. You can find me at David, period, determination.
Excellent. Excellent. David, I wish you well on your journey. I can't wait to see what you do next and all the means by which you find the end result, which is going to be a powerful impact on the people that are needing it most. So bless you, brother.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
The Aesthetics of Leadership podcast, the look of leadership that is unmistakable.